Graduation initiatives and programs. The purpose of this presentation is to provide an overview of initiatives and programs to enhance credit completion and increase graduation rates for high school students. The initiatives and programs presented will be implemented during the 2018-19 year. This item provides an opportunity for the board's information and discussion.
Welcome, Mr. Alvarez.
Thank you. And good evening, President Rohde, Dr. Thompson, members of the board. Tonight, I wanted just to give you some information on our high school alternative opportunities this evening, as well as some of the initiatives and programs we currently have in place for this upcoming school year to increase graduation rate, which is one of our long-term goals in our strategic plan. Before I get into the particulars,
public and for the record, this was a request that was shared by Board Member Reeser. He requested a report as it relates to graduation and alternative programming, and I just want to make that for the record that we are following up on his request as well.
Thank you. So before we get into the particulars, just giving you a historical background on what has happened probably 6 to 7 years and beyond what we had in place before kind of the budget crisis that we were in. We started with 3 metros. We had Metro Boulevard, Metro Midtown, and Metro Meridian were our 3 metro schools that were serving alternative opportunities for our students here in the Wichita Public Schools. We also had 2 learning centers, one at Town East Square, one at Town West Square, but those were mainly serving our adult learners. So you'll see there's a little difference in our Town East as we go through the actual PowerPoint, but that was for adult learners. We still had eSchool, virtual eSchool serving virtual students, and then we had our Dunbar Adult Learning Center. So that will give you kind of a background on where we were 6 to 7 years ago and then where we are now. So during our difficult times, budget decisions had to be made over the years to either close schools, consolidate, or discontinue programs. Some of the programs that closed or consolidated are on the screen. I kind of marked those out just to kind of show you that those 3 metros eventually closed and consolidated and moved to Chester Lewis Academy. We closed the Town East and Town West Square, or the Adult Learning Centers from Town East and Town West. And our virtual eSchool that was still there, and our Dunbar Adult Learning Center then consolidated also and moved to our current Chester Lewis location. So those 2 remaining that consolidated were that adult learning and virtual eSchool. So as we opened, as Chester Lewis Academy opened in the fall of 2012, that's when Metro Boulevard moved in 2012 to the Chester Lewis location when they renamed Chester Lewis. 2 years after that, in 2014, is when Metro Meridian consolidated, closed, and moved into Chester Lewis, to where all the actual metros then ended up at Chester Lewis. The metro schools served around 400 to 500 students at the time. Now that through consolidation, Chester Lewis has the capacity to serve around 200 students, but that's just for the alternative setting. I'll get into more detail because they did add the virtual school, which houses around 150 students, high school students, and about 50 K-8 students. So if you add virtual as well as the consolidated metros, it's serving around the 400 capacity as before from those 3 metros before they were consolidated. Also was another program in Chester Lewis was that Adult Learning Center. So those are the 3 specific programs that are currently housed in Chester Lewis. The alternative program, which was the old metros, the virtual eSchool, which is the online, where students do the online learning, and then adding the Adult Learning Center is also there. Our long-term goal and part of the strategic plan, we believe through our alternative opportunities in the district, we can not only increase our graduation rate, but ensure success for all students. So every student is future ready, empowered to dream, believe, and achieve. So we're excited at the opportunity for these alternative options for students that may need a little smaller class size or a different way of teaching, because it is a little bit different within the Chester Lewis Academy programs that are served there. So 3 programs I want to get into specifically are going to be the learning centers at a comprehensive high school. These are also programs that are going to help increase graduation rate besides the Chester Lewis. I'll get in more detail about our all-day learning centers at all the comprehensive high schools, which is very exciting. Chester Lewis, the alternative, which is the Gemini 2 redesign. So we have a different look coming for Chester Lewis alternative, as well as housed there as the virtual. And then we're going to reopen Town East Learning Center on the east side, which will look a little different, but I'll get into that once we get to that particular slide. So now I'm going to get into a little bit of detail about those specific programs. And just to make sure, for clarification, I had mentioned that Town East and Town West previous was for our adult learners. This time, when we open Town East, it's going to be for high school students. We're specifically tracking the credit recovery or original credit, an alternative option for students that may not be the traditional high school setting, may not be for them. So this is a great opportunity for our 9th through 12th grade students. So let's start with the high school learning centers. This actually is a continuum of service. So beginning this year, all comprehensive high schools will have a learning center open during the school day to allow all our students to recover credits. That's going to be, and we have not had this opportunity before, so this is very exciting for our schools to really allow for students to think about what are early warning indicators for students if 9th graders are not on track and not waiting just till their senior year to try to get them to hurry up and get those credit recovered. We want to start at the younger ages or the younger grades, the 9th and 10th grade. So this is open during the regular school day. It is for credit recovery. We also provide, this is no fee to students. So this will be when our counselors start to talk to students about pre-enrollment or enrollment and the needs of, individual needs of each student. If they need a credit recovery, they can go ahead and enroll in the all-day learning center. Schools also have their repeat classes, retrieval classes, off-sequence classes that also helps out with the continuum of service as well. The transition option for students coming from out of district or from foster care, or students that have been kind of bounced from school to school or out of district, there's also been, this is an opportunity for them to really focus on their actual credits that they need. So if they come in late, like 3 weeks before the end of a semester, for example, sometimes they're in there, but they may not get an opportunity to get a credit because they were in there for a short amount of time. But instead of them anybody just sitting in a class not earning a credit, by putting them in this high school all-day learning center will allow them to gain that credit, and then coming into the second semester, then they'll get enrolled into their normal classes and continue in the learning center as well to gain that credit recovery. So that's a great opportunity this coming school year for our schools and our students at each comprehensive high school. Chester Lewis, the Gemini 2 redesign. We did a previous presentation on Gemini. There's around 200 students served in this alternative program, and this is an opportunity for students that need an alternative setting. We have opportunities. They've been heavily doing a lot with the trauma-informed work, so students that may need some regulation of themselves can go to a mindfulness room, get regulated, get prepared, and then go back to their actual classroom. This will allow the least amount of instructional time lost for those students. So they're going to have the mindfulness room, flexible seating is going to be added this school year. They still continue with the flexible schedule and self-paced curriculum, and their curriculum is blended. So they're going to be using our Edgenuity curriculum online as well as face-to-face with staff. So it'll be blended between the face-to-face with the teacher as well as online curriculum. Our Wichita Virtual School also housed at Chester Lewis. The high school enrollment is around 150 students in our virtual program. It also serves K-8 with around 50 students. This is where a computer will be checked out, and most of the learning will be off-site of Chester Lewis. So this is at home, provided support through the teachers online, but they do have to come back and take their unit tests at Chester Lewis. So that they provide, and then there'll be a check-in as well with the teacher and the student to make sure that they're still on track, to make sure that they are gaining what they need during the virtual experience. And then we have our new Wichita Learning Center at Town East, and this is going to house 2 programs. We have our Flex program, which is a flexible schedule for students. They have to have a minimum of 10 hours per week on site. A lot of it is, and this is the difference between virtual and even the Learning Center and Town East Flex program, is that they will come and get face-to-face instruction or help or support from the teachers. So this is a virtual and a flexible schedule. And then the Learning Center part of that is about 60 students. We're starting with 60 students, but it can expand if we feel that there's enough computer availability. We can probably expand the 60 students, but since it's new, we want to make sure that we get it off running appropriately. This is going to serve high school students, not adult learners. This is for high school, for credit recovery and original credit. So this, we look at our Learning Center at Town East as being even a transition. So if students may not be doing well at their school, they want to go to Town East, they may be successful in credit recovery at the Town East Learning Center online with a teacher there to support, but they could also do original credit. So if they're successful, they can do that. But if they're waiting for a spot to open in the alternative school, if they're waiting for a spot to open in the virtual school, this still gives them an opportunity to get credit recovery or original credit, so they're not just waiting because they didn't feel successful in a comprehensive setting. So this is another exciting and great opportunity for our students in the Wichita Public Schools to have an alternative opportunity of learning for them. And I want to kind of stop there and see if there's any questions before I move on to the initiatives to increase graduation rate. This was more of the programs that we have for alternative opportunities. So I'll kind of pause, see if there's any questions at this particular time over the slides that I just covered.
Boy, that's all it took. Stan.
Thank you, Mr. Rode. Thank you, Gil. I appreciate the administration's efforts to actually follow through on what we requested back in January, so I really appreciate that. And it appears that we truly do have a comprehensive plan now. I think at the time the request was made, we were wondering, was there a plan in place? And now it's obviously there is, but I did just have quick couple questions. Chester Lewis Center, those of us who've been around a while, it used to be a middle school. So every time Chester Lewis is brought up, I'm thinking of middle-aged students, but we're talking about high school students now there, aren't we?
That is correct.
Okay.
It's high school. Now, there are some virtual K-8
Yes.
on the virtual side, but they're not at the building. It's just for high school. Yes.
Okay, and that's what I want to make clear for the public, because sometimes I think they hear us mention that building and they're still thinking middle school. Okay.
You are correct.
How does the district determine what is the first warning sign the district receives that a child or a student may need alternative education?
Well, we're going to look at, there's 6 ways to increase graduation rate, and one of those is the early warning indicators. So if you look at grades, but really credit deficiency would probably be the number one thing that we look at that's going to really tell us, do we need alternative opportunities? But there's sometimes where kids may just be compliant and they're just going in there, but they're not being successful at their comprehensive school. So sometimes there has to be that conversation, even through our individual plan of study or through a counselor and administrator saying, hey, what's going on? And they may say, well, this is just too big of a school for me. So then they can get into, okay, here are some alternative opportunities for you, so you're not just continuing to get behind and just trying to go through the motions. That's a little different than the ones that we see that are extremely credit deficient. And to get into each of these programs, there are certain criteria that they'll need to meet. Like the Flex program, you have to have at least 11 credits to be able to get in there. So we have a kind of, I call it a one-pager, but it's actually 2 pages that we will allow for counselors, administrators, leaders to be able to share if students are specifically looking to get into any of these alternative opportunities.
And just 2 real more quick questions, because I know some other members want to ask some questions too. Do we also look at truancy and absences?
Yes, and I'll get it. That's going to be
Okay, that's a second. That's fine.
But yes.
Then my last question then is, under the old Metro system, what percentage or how many students were we serving in that system? And are we back up to that number with our new comprehensive approach to this?
I think the old system had about 400 to 500 students that were being served, and that was just for the metros. So at Chester Lewis, with the virtual, we have matched around that 400 mark. But the actual metro part itself, or the alternative, we're at 200 that we can serve. And
And when we had to make cuts to the metro system, did we see a decline in graduation rates?
Yes, we did. I think when you talk about how do we save students that need alternative settings, so anytime you take away a safety net, opportunity for kids to learn, that is around the time where you can see a decrease as well. And it takes a little time to see the effects of that
Yeah.
as people are trying to be reinstituted back into their comprehensive settings. But yes, you can see that there was a decrease going on once they were closed down.
And that was the point it was kind of a leading question.
Yes.
My point was, once you take a safety net away, you will see some consequences.
Right, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Cheryl,
Yes, thank you very much. What it makes me happy with this is that we really have varieties of alternatives for our students now. And because some students really don't want to leave their comprehensive high school, but they're so far behind that they'll never graduate. And with having the high school learning centers, that gives them an opportunity to do that. My question surrounds those high school learning centers because I know that they're open all day long, but will a student be in there all day, or can they float in and out? Say, for example, they get in trouble and don't understand algebra, and they need help in algebra to be able to pass that credit before they can go on and get the next. Can they come in, get that kind of help, be able to get that, and then move back out into the comprehensive setting?
That's a great question. The answer is yes. So they can be enrolled in a learning center, how many hours they need. If they're more credit deficient than normal, they can stay in there for 2 hours. But what we don't want to do necessarily is keep them in all day. We want them to get the experience for an hour or 2 hours, and then yes, go back into a normal class. So yes, you can go back and forth.
And those students then would become our students that we start to watch to see if they maybe aren't functioning well in one of our bigger high schools and need to go to a Chester Lewis or a Town East. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yes. So that when I said continuum of service, that's exactly what we want to do. We want to monitor the students that are currently in our high school learning centers to see if they're being successful, and if not, then maybe offer some other alternative opportunities so they can be successful.
Right. And I had the wonderful opportunity to be at the graduation for our late people this year that didn't quite have enough credits to walk across the stage with their class, but they stayed in school and got them. And those students were absolutely thrilled that we
Absolutely.
had an opportunity for them to make up those credits and get to be able to walk.
Yes.
And they were just as proud walking with that group as they would have been anywhere. So
That's correct.
I'm really glad that we have, and our world has changed, so we need to change too, and I think this is a good change for us. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Ben,
I think you may have already answered part of it with Stan's, but I was wondering, is the selection process a staff referral, or is it a self-selection process by the student to go into these alternative programs, or is it a hybrid of both?
I would say it's a hybrid of both. What we don't want to do is it's like a mass exodus, because obviously we want people to have the opportunity, and we need to look at the data to make sure that there's sometimes there are a lot more resources too at a comprehensive high school. So obviously some students think that they want to sign a truancy disclaimer when they're 16. We have a process now too that we have a conference with them and find out what's going to be the best opportunity for them. We'll ask them, have you tried your learning center at your high school? And if they say yes, well then we're going to provide them other opportunities so they can stay in school. We can reduce dropouts and increase graduation rates.
Okay, thank you.
Ernestine,
I'm really excited, of course, about the alternatives coming back. I've had a lot of years of teaching at one of the metros, and I taught in the e-school also. And that leads me, what online curriculum? Is it a purchased online curriculum being used for e-school, or is that a teacher created individually for each class, like an English teacher creates the curriculum for that English class, or is this a purchased product that we have?
We did adopt a new curriculum for all and aligned it with all of our virtual blended learning, which is Edgenuity. So
And Edgenuity is used in all of these?
Correct.
All of these programs?
that is correct.
Okay.
And the good thing about that is if we have students that are moving around or mobile, they can take over where they left off at another school if needed as well.
Okay. Are there any of them in which the the semester starts at the semester and it ends at the semester, or is this a flexible begin, flexible end?
It is a flexible begin and a flexible end, is why the actual curriculum itself can either be extended, and the student mobility is going to have no bearing on the success. Because if they move, they're going to still use Edgenuity. So you can extend the learning if they need to, which we did with our summer graduates. We extended their learning because of that. So that will be the same as well.
Is there an something provided for those students who are very bright and already know the information that's in the Edgenuity, or can they hurry through it in 3 weeks and say, gee, I've got my half credit?
I am not sure how the curriculum, if it's one of those that builds on the success that it has or not. I think for right now, looking at credit recovery is where we're headed, but there is some original credit as well.
Okay.
So there may be some that are very bright that maybe want to do early graduate.
My dentist, a local dentist in town, was a graduate of our school, and he already came into my government class knowing more than they would end up knowing. So he was able to spend his time being working at the congressman's office downtown and expanding. So and the other thing I found in my years of 25 years experience at the Metros is that we tended to have a whole lot in the very, very bright, gifted or gifted unidentified, and then a lot that had struggled at the bottom. These kids had caught on right away and were bored to death as the teacher was having to roll the ball down the middle in a comprehensive class, as the teacher must do. And so by having the students be able to take responsibility for their own learning and be able to move as fast as they can. But I also found kids that were perfectly willing, very bright, but perfectly willing to be reading, what's the monkey book, the third grade? Curious George level of kind of work. And until I would find out, and I say, I have a secret about you. You're extremely bright. I'm not going to let you read Curious. And they'd say that school was boring. Mm-hmm. But then when we began to meet, so that's what I would want to make sure, is that because I would bet the same kind of dichotomy is the kind that is ending up. Those who are very bright, very quick, very bored, but they've still got to do the seat time. Mm-hmm. And then those that have, for whatever reason, and some of them were troubled kids that had a crisis at home, and the crisis is interfering with their ability to think in a comprehensive school. So being able to go to a place where they can each work at their own speed then?
That is correct, both virtual and the alternative setting, self-paced.
Okay. Well, I'm excited about this, and I will tell you that with the e-school having, as you point out, about 150, and the Metros, in my experience, one year we had in the three about 700. So that was a lot of alternative kids that were getting credits and learning. There were things like the Metro Boulevard Literary Magazine won a national award, and it was the only one in Kansas that received the 5 on the literary magazine that was put out by the school. And there were things like that can be done with alternative kids that when you've got a classroom of 30, and you have to roll down the middle, there are kids on both ends that fall off the edge, and that I'm just thrilled that we've got this.
Great.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
See if I had it. I got them all answered. Thank you.
Yes. My pleasure.
Julie.
I also appreciate the information tonight. I had the opportunity, I think it was last week, I was invited by the Grandview Meadowlark Neighborhood Association to talk to them about graduation rates. And Superintendent Thompson had provided me with some of these things that you guys were doing ahead of time so that I could pass that information on to them. So it's really great to see this tonight. They were excited about the learning centers that would be at the high schools. So I appreciate your work.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not quite done yet, so I still got some initiatives to increase.
And we may not like
Yeah,
the
we're
second
talking in the middle of it.
I do have one.
All right.
The e-school sends the computers home with the students,
Correct.
but the other places, the students come to the place that has the computers.
Correct.
Is there any teaching about how to do programming or other kinds of IT-type learning other than working on the computer using the programs that we provide?
We do have it in our district, not necessarily on the virtual side of the curriculum or the alternative, but we do have coding going on. We do have computer programming at our comprehensive high schools.
Yeah, I knew that. I just wondered if that was available in the alternative settings.
Yeah, not currently.
Okay. Thank you.
That's all the questions we have. I guess we're ready for the second half.
So, phase 2, yes, second half. We're going to talk about initiatives to increase graduation, since our long-term goal was increasing graduation rate. We do just want to let you know that we do have and adopted a flexible online curriculum, which I think Ernestine, you already talked about or asked the question at Edgenuity. We also added a algebra foundational course for students that may be struggling in algebraic concepts. And the good news is, and that's coming in for 9th graders, so there's still opportunities for those students that want to be qualified admission or Board of Regents qualified. They can still do that by taking a 4th year of math their senior year. So we're not stopping them from still becoming qualified admission or Board of Regents qualified. This just allows them to get on pace for the ones that are struggling at a younger age. So we're excited about that. We also have our individual plans of study. We kicked that off on last year, specifically trying to get our 7th grade through 10th grade was our target to get them on Zello. So that was our task and our goal at that particular time. Now we're going to go deeper this coming year too. We're going to roll it into 11th grade as our students move through the school year or the years. So we'll have it in 7 through 11. That doesn't mean seniors don't get an opportunity, because they still can, as individual classes can do that, as well as AVID classes. And our CCCs also can promote that for our seniors. We look at academic and extracurricular resumes. They'll keep their own resumes. They take a matchmaker survey to see what career opportunities they have. Then they go surfing through what colleges offer some of those. But the cool thing is we want to focus on like a 4-year plan, making sure that students are taking the appropriate classes going through high school if they have an interest in a career. So if they find out that dissecting is not their cup of tea, but yet they want to be a doctor or a surgeon, well, maybe they can choose another career path if that's something that they can't. So we want to just make sure we're intentional, and we also have the graduation post-secondary goal setting and monitoring of that as we have conversations during pre-enrollment as well. Talked a little bit about this one. We want processes to monitor and address early warning indicators. This is one area that we're really going to focus on in the secondary schools. And going back to Mr. Reeser, you had mentioned what data we're going to look at. We're going to look at chronic absenteeism, grades, credit deficiency, and behavior are all data points that we know that could help us focus early on students that may not be on track. But we want to have intentional ongoing data stat sessions, meaning data dialogue, data analysis for all our leaders, so they can look at their own data at their school to really know, okay, what students that we currently have may be already chronically absent, which is 10% of the days. So we're going to look at that quarterly. We're going to look at credit deficiency after each semester. So they're going to have an idea of 9th graders, 10th graders, and 11th graders, and even their seniors who are already in those areas of concern. So we can have an action plan and get something done for those students, or find out why they're chronically absent in that regard. But starting early instead of waiting till the end when we're frantically trying to get them through as seniors. Another initiative, we're going to assess and refine our disciplinary practices. So we're going to start with restorative practice and our trauma-informed approach. So our restorative practice is a framework for building community and for responding to challenging behavior through authentic dialogue, coming to understanding and making things right. It's not a program or an add-on. It's a philosophy or mindset change from the traditional punitive disciplinary practices that we are most known for. We want offenders to take responsibility for their actions, restore relationships, and reduce the chance of the behavior from ever happening again. That's our whole purpose, is so it doesn't continue to happen. So each of these approaches create that third bullet of a relationship-based culture. So that will be tied into our consortium, that will be tied into our student advocacy, where every student has an adult advocate, and also talking about social emotional characteristics too, so supporting the whole child, that concept. Other initiatives, we do have our AVID, Advancement via Individual Determination, which also helps middle-of-the-road students become college-ready and push them to, obviously you have to graduate before you can go on, but really focusing on college. We have our Gear Up grant that focuses, it's been moving up every year, so this coming year is our 11th grade students that also have an opportunity to benefit from our Gear Up grant at Southeast, South, North, and West. So those students will have opportunities to college visits, partnering with our CCCs as well to make sure that they are becoming college and career ready. And then we have our JAG, our Jobs for America's Graduates, at all our comprehensive high schools. And these also look at students that may be at risk or close to not graduating, so that provides them another adult advocate that's going to really focus on them, making sure they do finish up, but also provide some employability skills so they can either go on to a career or workplace or college if they so choose to do so. And then we have, for our more intense mentoring programs, Rise Up for Youth, as well as our Ready to Impact. So our Rise Up for Youth is with Lynn and David Gilkey. Our Ready to Impact is Robert Love and Rhonda Hicks. We're excited at the opportunities that they're providing for our students with either small group conversations with social emotional character development, but also following up with individual students weekly on their progress with grades, attendance, and so on. So we don't want them to fall through the cracks. So they also prevent our dropouts as well as increasing graduation rate for those two programs. So in closing, these are obviously all these opportunities. So alignment of these alternative programs and initiatives fully align with the district's shared beliefs and our strategic plan. So providing alternative opportunities helps ensure we are helping every student obtain a high school diploma and ensuring success for all our students in the Wichita Public Schools. So I'll open it now for the second half if there's any comments or questions.
Ernestine.
Will this, will our money that we're going to get for some more counselors and social workers, will those be, any of them going toward these upper grade programs to watch out for these kids that show some of these troubling behaviors?
I'm going to let Gil answer that question. However, they will be in some of the comprehensive high schools, and in the next presentation, you will see exactly what schools. So they will be in special schools, as well as some of the high schools, middle school, and elementary. So there will be some support at some of the special day schools, alternative schools, for support, and we'll give you an extensive list of those schools and what we will be doing with that particular program in the next presentation.
Well, I was particularly coming in reference to where you're saying how that we watch their attendance, we watch their grades, we watch all that. That's an awful lot for just one of those high school counselors that's got to handle all the 10th grade or something. So we will have some of those that can be utilized to help with these kinds of, to catch. Okay.
Absolutely. We also, one of the other 6 ways is a collective responsibility as a school to make sure that we are watching and these early warning indicators as well. So if there's like these attendance teams, so we don't want to put it on one person, just one counselor
Right,
either.
exactly.
But any other support would definitely help if we get additional support.
I was
And
tooting the horn of, for example, one of the dropouts that was saved by the metros is now literally a rocket scientist. And he was a dropout that only by being able to come over there where he could work at his own pace and have some say in how fast and what things happen. And so a counselor at one of the high schools went out to the home and found this kid, and it's like, what's going on here? And so I'm really glad to know that there's going to be some counseling and social work help to make sure that we can catch these kids before there's been a crisis in their life that's
Absolutely.
can't be repaired.
Yeah.
Stan.
Again, about warning signals. Do we also look at mobility, there's a lot of students that start the year maybe in South High's district, then they may be in East High's district for a while. I mean, they basically, I'm just shocked at how many number of families are, I mean, it's a sign of our times, and we've had decades of low wages economy now. Are we looking at how many times, or do we even know if a student moves a lot?
We could definitely look at that, because if they're hitting if they're not being successful attendance-wise, grade, to me, mobility really lends itself to where they feel connected. So if they do have to move, we have to align our systems to make sure that we're not increasing variability, that they feel, okay, if I'm at this point using Edgenuity, or they can come over to another school and still continue on the path. That's what's exciting about our new alternative programs, is that we try to keep that and decrease variability within our system, so they feel success. Because if they come in and I'm taking a class for no credit, that's when they start to say, well, why am I here?
Yeah.
So as long as we can continue that, I think we'll look at, is mobility, can it be an issue? Yes, because they may have felt connected to a school they were previously at, and they had to move to a new school. It takes them a little bit to get used to the new school. So that whole relationship-based culture too, hopefully they'll come in, feel good about, because they're in a place of connectedness, as well as even restorative practice that will allow for more of that, creating that relationship-based culture that they'll feel good no matter where they're going, but aligning our systems too is going to help.
And some of our curriculum that we've talked about, that Edgenuity, that's why it's important, because it individualized the instruction for the students. And so no matter what school they go to, they can log back in there, and it'll take them right where they ended out when they were at East or when they were at South. So that's also the importance of the consistent curriculum that we're using as well.
Thank you.
Cheryl?
Okay, just a real quick question. Restorative practices, I know we have kind of been bringing that through in our high schools. Is it in every high school now?
We are starting this year with all secondary, middle, and high. Matter of fact, elementary is also using some of restorative practice as well. So
Okay.
it should be
So it'll be in all of our middle and high this year?
correct.
Okay, thank you. That's great. I'm glad to hear that, because I think it is an excellent program.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Well, hang on a minute. Stan got excited, I think.
I just want to clarify one thing on the restorative practice. I went to during the spring break, I went to one of the teachers' training on that, and it was pointed out that, yes, it's at every school, but it's up to that school. It can't, this is type of a program that can't come from the top down. The school itself has to develop it. So there could be cases where some schools aren't putting as much effort into it as others. But I think even the schools that are putting a great deal of effort into it, they're trying to tell get the schools that are not totally 100% on board. But unfortunately, it's not one of those programs where we can say, where the Board of Education says, you must do this, because they will not work that way. Because it has to come from the staff itself to really want to deal with discipline problems that way.
Absolutely. I just want to reiterate too, it's not a program, it's a philosophy, mindset change. So how we approach a student, do we escalate or do we de-escalate? Do we allow them to regulate themselves before we get into the reason why they're mad? So if you start asking them why when they're mad and not regulated, you're going to escalate that conversation, which then can turn into a higher consequence. So it's how we are going to change the way we do things as adults when students are dysregulated or deregulated in their behavior.
Ernestine?
I'm still learning acronyms. What's CCC?
I apologize. It's the College and Career Coordinators.
Oh, I
At
knew the
each high
college and
school.
career part. I just didn't know what the last C.
Yeah.
Run, Gil, run.
Right.
Thank you very much.